Hi, and welcome back to From Chains to Change. I am Consuela Gaines, better known as Sway, and these are my co-workers.
I'm Marcus Simmons, better known as Chachi.
And I'm Samika Minor, also known as Mika.
And we are here today to continue to share with you guys about VOTE, Voice of the Experienced. I would like to, the last show we introduced you to our founder and director, Mr. Norris Henderson. You also got the opportunity to see Chico and Ronald as they shared their stories and the work that they're doing here at VOTE. And so we wanted to give you an idea of who we are because we're local. We're right here in Lafayette. We're the organizers for our chapter, and we want you guys to get to know us and why it is that we do what we do. So I guess I'll just start it off by sharing with you briefly my story of self and how I came to vote. It actually started back in 1994 when I was 23 years old, young, couldn't find employment. I was living back and forth between Lafayette and Opelousas, and I ended up dating a guy who unfortunately had fallen victim to the criminal justice system in Louisiana. And he and I were dating, and we had been dating for a while. And he ended up facing 20 years in prison. And me, as a young girl who didn't want to lose yet another person, I developed this plan to help him to break out of the jail over in St. Landry Parish in Opelousas, Louisiana. And we did. Like I said, young, crazy, didn't have any goals set for myself, didn't have a whole lot of education. And so I basically fell for anything. I felt at the time that I didn't have anything to look forward to. And when I committed that crime of helping him to escape from prison, it eventually led me to prison myself. My first sentence was 72 years as a first-time convicted felon, 72 years. Later on, that sentence was overturned, and we went back to court. I ended up pleading guilty and received a 47-year sentence for armed robbery, convicted felon in possession of firearm, and aggravated escape. Also federal charges. So, the decisions that we make, it impacted my family greatly, deeply, my community, my friends. And it's something that if I could go back and change it, I certainly would. Because of that 47-year sentence, I served 22 years at the Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women in St. Gabriel, Louisiana, which is kind of like where I was able to discover who I am, because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I was just living from day to day. I mean, I just, I didn't know. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to rise above the circumstances that I was in. But it was while I was incarcerated where I was able to be around a lot of other women from all walks of life who, too, were at some point pretty much where I was before I went to prison. You know, just living a very unstable life. And unfortunately, we ended up having to go to prison for us to discover who we were, not realizing that that could have been accomplished without going to prison.
Right.
It could have been accomplished had we really had the right people around us,
Right.
the right support system,
Right.
the right friends, the right partners who we choose to be in relationships. And I realized, I learned that while I was incarcerated.
Right.
I learned that. And so that is kind of what brought me to vote, because while I was incarcerated, I was a counsel sub, what they call an inmate lawyer. I did that for like 10 years. I was very active within the prison system, and I was always giving back, helping the women to realize their full potential, because I had finally realized my own. Of course, it didn't take 22 years for me to discover who I was, but that time while I was incarcerated, it did help me to discover what it was that I wanted to do. And I knew even before I left prison that I wanted to stay connected to those women and to be able to help and give back, because I saw a lot of injustice. I saw a lot of over sentencing for people, you know, women who were in domestic violence relationships and things like that, who shouldn't have received life sentences for fighting back. And so it's a lot of injustices that I came across while I was incarcerated, and that's what is kind of the background to why I'm here at Vote. And of course, I got to shout out Sister Khadijah Rashad, who also has a show here on AOC. If it wasn't for Sister Khadijah, I wouldn't be working here at Vote, because she connected with me. She connected me with the then statewide organizer, Robert Goodman Jr., who is unfortunately now deceased. But Vote, they were looking for formerly incarcerated people to come and open this chapter here in Lafayette, and I just so happened to be blessed with that opportunity, and here I am today with my good coworkers right here.
And we're so glad to have you. And you know, no matter how many times I've heard your story, it still is just so profound and so real. And I know that there are so many women, not only women, but people in our community that can relate. And that's the reason why, you know, that's why we exist. That's why we exist.
Right.
So sweet. At what point, like, what happened that made you say to yourself, man, I have to change? Like, if you could think of the incident that took place that made you say, I have to change, and man, I don't want any other person on this earth to experience this, because it is just that foul or that excruciating or that, you know, just that horrific.
You know what? I actually think that it was probably when I was placed in solitary confinement.
Typical, right.
In that one-man cell for 23 hours a day. and not being able to communicate with other people on the compound, with the other ladies, and just really the it was so degrading, right? I mean, the most degrading part of it was like the strip searches, right? Anytime we visit, after the visit, when you're in visitation, you're having fun, you're eating, you're talking to your family, your friends, or whoever it is that came to visit you, and then afterwards, after you told your family bye, and you have to get in this line of other women, whose visit ended before yours, and go into the bathroom where two officers are sitting in there with their logs, and you have to literally strip and take off everything: socks, shoes, everything, pants, butt naked. You have to squat, spread them, and cough. No matter if your menses is on, it didn't matter. And to me, that was the most degrading experience of my incarceration. And it was those times that made me feel like I have to be a part of trying to prevent people from coming into this. They gotta know that this happens. This TV depicts it a lot of times in certain ways. They add stuff, but they take a lot away from what incarceration really is, and how it can affect you as a woman, as a person, and as a human being. They tend to sometimes go really over the top with the things that incarcerated people experience.
Right.
And so I knew that when I came home, I didn't know how, but I knew that when I came home that I wanted to be a part of making things right for people who were just like me.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm, like I said, I'm so glad that, I don't want to say that I'm glad that you experienced that, but because of that experience, we have the pleasure, this community has the pleasure of your auspiciousness, because you're out here.
Yeah.
You're out here. Since the day I met you, you were out here trying to preserve the youth, trying to establish the real definition of a community in this community. Mm-hmm. And for that, I applaud you. And that's why I love you so much, because I know your heart is real. Yeah.
Definitely.
So if you had a word to say to young people right now,
Mm-hmm.
what would that be from the heart? What would that be?
Be you. Be yourself, because I see too many people, adults and all, just trying to live somebody else's life, trying to be like what they see on Hollywood and on the screen or on TikTok, or everybody is trying to be everyone who it's not them. Just be who you are. Love yourself first and foremost, because if you don't love yourself, you can't expect anybody else to love you. Be who you are. I mean, I encountered a young lady at probation and parole office one day, and she was just kind of young, and she actually was like 23, and I was like, man, that's the exact age I was when I went to prison. And she was just just kind of wild, and I'm like, yeah. She was like, I know I'm ghetto. I said, that's okay. Ghetto is fine. It's you. It's who you are. There's nothing wrong with it. It's our culture. And a lot of people, they try to, really look at people and downgrade them and judge them because of where they're coming from, or how they talk or how they dress. Just be yourself. yourself authentically. Just be who you are, and that's just the best advice I can give to any young kid out there.
And
Just be you.
And it's not a coincidence that you brought that up. Be authentic, all right? Because I just, prior to coming to film this, I was in a conversation with a young man, and it was about that topic. You know, I wrote, of course I wrote a book called Life Lies, but there's a chapter in the book that talks about how imitation is suicide. And if you die before you're able to grow into yourself, you'll never know who you really were. You know, because that's what's going on in our community. We're adapting everyone else's style, the style that's being passed down to us through this social media, through these devices.
Right.
And we're adopting these styles, and unfortunately, that's our demise.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It is. It's unfortunate because for a long time I couldn't answer if someone had asked me, "Who are you?" I couldn't answer.
Right.
You know, and now I pretty much pride myself in being able to say I know who I am and whose I am.
Right.
But too often, and a lot of people don't get that. They don't discover who they are and whose they are, and therefore we find people who are just lost, just existing and not living.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right. And that's why we're here. That's why people need to know that we exist, and to where they have someone that they could call, that they can come to the office, they can talk to. We could try and get them help with whatever it is that they're dealing with. We can try to navigate them, help navigate them to the proper services.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, because being a formerly incarcerated person, it comes with its many challenges, from job opportunities to housing. It has so many barriers in place for anyone who's been justice impacted.
Right.
And we can avoid that. You can avoid that. Just don't get out there wilding out, breaking the law, hurting each other. The crime rate, I hate watching the news because I see so many, especially young people, committing crimes and getting in trouble and going to jail and going to prison. And I get so upset because I'm like, here we are trying to help get people home, and these guys are fighting to get into prison.
Right.
It almost makes it useless or hopeless, the work that we're trying to do. We're trying to fight for criminal justice reform, but it makes it really hard for us to do as people are committing more and more crimes. And I know people's circumstances are different.
Right, they vary.
People's mental capacities are different, because mental health is huge also.
It is.
It has a huge part in the growing numbers of incarceration, because a lot of people, they're walking around, they don't even realize that they have a mental illness.
Right. And it's because it's not, because when we grew up, mental illness didn't exist. Remember, you just get over it. Get over it.
Yeah.
Just deal with it, get over it, don't cry, and had we had this overstanding that we have today, we probably wouldn't be have so many of us in this predicament.
Right.
Where we literally believe and it's due to mental illness. We literally believe in any and everything that's put in front of us, but it's all because I think it's all because we had no blueprint
Right.
to go to, in this growing up thing, because it was just told, deal with it, suck it up.
Right.
And now we're in a position today where, so dealing with it is just sucking up whatever is in front of us.
Right.
And that shapes us into being these people who don't even, we seem to not value our lives. It seems that we don't value ourselves. Seems that we don't value family. But that's not true. We just don't know what value is. Right? Is it safe to say that?
Right. It is. And Marcus, even with you, most people that know you, they know you by Chachi. When I met you, we were actually speaking on a panel, and that's when I first met you, and you brought me to tears, as you shared your story. And I was like, wow. I knew then, I was like, this guy is powerful for the background that you have, and to see where you are today. It gives me hope, and I hope that it gives some of our watchers, our viewers, some hope, because it doesn't happen overnight.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. In fact, I want to say my progress is, you're looking at 20 years in the making. 20 years of battling mental issues, battling systematical issues, just battling everything, and just endurance. But yeah, like you said, I'm born and raised right here in Lafayette. Like similar story, like most young men in my position, no guidance. I grew up with no father, when I was at a young age, and my mom was actually, I apologize, but my mom was actually shot down and left paralyzed at a young age. And, we already didn't have a father. So that just took away any childhood that I may have had, that I was robbed of that, because me being the oldest boy, my job was to protect and provide. So that's where my life went to providing. And unfortunately, the only thing you have is your surroundings, right? So in my surroundings, like you said, I'm from the ghetto, for real. I'm really from the ghetto. So all everyone did, every man that provided or protected, was doing it in the streets, through the streets, by ways of the streets. So when my mom was paralyzed, when she paralyzed, and needless to say, we lost everything because mom couldn't hustle no more. She couldn't do anything. She was she had to learn how to be this. She just had to learn how to be this other person. I mean, I can only imagine what that's like, to all of a sudden one day just not be able to use half of your body. And I could only imagine, and no matter how many times she tried to explain it to me, I know she still couldn't explain it to me to the extent of what she actually was feeling. But in turn, what that did was, it turned me to the streets. It turned me to, like I said, with no guidance, with no man, no masculine figure around. The only masculine figures I had was brother-in-laws, and they were all in and out of prison. They were all either drug dealers, or they were all, that's what I had. So when it was time for me to step up, because I remember the day that we lost everything. And I remember pushing my mom and my brothers and sisters to the homeless shelter. It was in the pouring rain and it was freezing cold outside. We didn't have a vehicle. We didn't have anything. And I was a kid. Maybe at the most, I don't even remember how old I was, but I was a kid, and I remember pushing them to the homeless shelter. And the lady tells us, well, you can't stay because we can only take 4 people in. So I had to leave my mom and brothers and sisters there, and I had to continue walking. And I remember just walking with nowhere to go, nobody to turn to. I just was walking. And I remember taking up shelter at the park, at the bathroom in the park at the King Center. And that became night after night. That's where I slept. Till one day, it was like my hate, my weight caught up to the hate that was developing inside of me. And I made up my mind. I said, I'm dying anyway, so I'm gonna die fixing my problem. And I got out there into the streets with this anger and with this oblivion and with this, I don't know what it was. And I just got out, like you said, just unconsciousness, just confused, angry, like not knowing that I was dealing with trauma, not knowing that it was mental. It was mental health is what I needed. I needed someone to help guide me, but I got into the streets because I didn't have that. And I started doing what they do. I started selling drugs, and so confused, I honestly believed that I was doing the right thing. I honestly believed that I was doing the good thing, and not realizing that, the problem with selling drugs is if you do become the head drug man, you become the target because someone else don't have to do the footwork. They just take what you have, and that's what happened with me. And I found myself defending my wife was my girlfriend at the time. She was pregnant for my son, and I already had a little girl. And I remember we were riding in the car, because by this time I had a little money, and we were riding in the car, and I remember some guys came and armed robbed me, and I took up arms to defend myself. And my kids, my son was, so needless to say, I ended up going to prison, right? Ended up with 21 and a half years, facing life, facing the death sentence, because I was charged with first-degree murder. Y'all, I'm sure everyone knows how that story goes. And I ended up with 21 and a half years. And I remember, my son being born while I was in prison. I remember my mom, I remember my daughter. All of a sudden, she just doesn't see her father no more. Just all of a sudden, she can't see her dad no more. And I remember, like you, thrown into solitary confinement. I was actually in Camp J. And I remember getting a letter from my mom, and my mom was telling me, she said, baby boy, she said, we need you. We need you to come home. Like, we need you, like we out here suffering, like we need you to come home. And that's the point where I made the promise to myself that from this point on, I was getting myself out of this facility. I don't know how long it would have took. I don't know but I knew I had to start somewhere, and I started my journey. But the first thing that I did know was that I first had to live long enough, right? Mm-hmm. So living in prison reckless, that had to stop. Mm-hmm. Living in prison trying to be the big bad wolf, keeping up with beating on my chest, because I had to learn how to unlearn all of that stuff in order to preserve myself.
Yeah.
And yeah, but the turning point was that I realized that I abandoned the people that I promised to protect and provide for. I actually left them worse off than they was before I went to prison, right? And so that was my wake up moment.
Yeah, because we have them, you know, going into the system, and it's not easy. It's not an easy pill to swallow when we realize all the pain and heartache that we've caused. But it's like a breath of fresh air when you wake up and have purpose.
Right.
You have purpose for your life. As you're looking at two people just right here that just at one point didn't have a purpose, just was out in the world just living reckless, you know, and just not really, like I said, just only existing. Not living. We were only existing from day to day to day. And there's a lot of people out there right now who are only existing, don't know where to go, where to turn to, who to talk to. But here at Vote, Voice of the Experience, that's what we do. We're a family. We provide that safe space and that opportunity for justice impacted people and your families to be able to get involved and to do something positive in our communities, and help to change these Jim Crow laws that are on the books and try to keep some people out of prison, because it's touching not just, you know, the adults, but now it's the children, and we want to be able to try to prevent that from happening. Samika, you real quiet over there. And you know, we know and realize that Samika isn't just as impacted, but we definitely need to hear your story and what brought you to Vote.
Yes, ma'am. I joined Vote because, like you say, I'm not justice impacted, but I do have family members who are impacted by the criminal injustice system. That's what we call it, the injustice system, not the justice system.
Right.
Okay, so, you know, and also I want to help restore the human and civil rights of formerly incarcerated as well as those who are currently incarcerated.
Right.
And I especially want to petition lawmakers to create laws and make modifications to existing laws as it relates to putting an end to mass incarceration and over criminalization. And I also want to fight injustices in the communities, especially minority communities, as it relates to racial profiling and police brutality.
Yeah.
And I want to say I have to give a shout out to Miss Petra Garrett and Miss Kelly Garrett. Miss Petra was the one who introduced me to Vote. I was in the early part of my doctoral program. I want to say it was either 2016, maybe 2017. So I started out by attending the monthly meetings, and then I fell off. I won't lie, I fell off. And then I came. Yeah, it does. It look life. Okay,
happens.
right. So you know, I started back attending the monthly meetings, and eventually signed up, became a volunteer, and now I'm here working along my wonderful colleagues here, and I'm just happy to be a part of the team. Grateful for the opportunity.
It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Yes, and we're excited to have you. Samika just adds to the team because, you know, she's an intelligent sister.
Yes, she is.
And a sister with a heart for justice impacted people and families. 'Cause she does some other volunteer work, and I mean, she's just really a little ray of sunshine here at Vote. And we are definitely glad to have her here with us.
Glad to be here.
So we're going to take us a break, and we'll be right back.
So welcome back, everyone, to From Chains to Change. So we're talking with Samika before we left for the break. And Samika, I have a question for you.
Shoot.
What kept you from falling into the traps of I want to say the streets, but just of life, period? What saved you? What preserved you?
What saved me? Strict parenting. I was raised in a very, very sheltered environment. We had, well, when I say we, I'm referring to my sister, my middle sister, because at the time it was just she and I. We had friends, who were out there, I would call out there, who roamed the streets and, could hang out and stuff, and we wasn't allowed, to do it. And when we played outside, which was very, very seldom, when we played outside, my parents, they watched us. I mean, they sat on a porch. We go home and play in the yard. We couldn't go nowhere else. And, we and my sister, we were like, why we can't be like him? Why we can't run around the projects like all the rest of the kids? And, we really, really felt some kind of way about it. But now that I've gotten older, I realize why my parents were the way they were. Like I said, at the time I didn't, but now I do. And I'm grateful because the strict upbringing is what saved me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you, man, I've seen in so many instances where that strict parenting backfired.
Yeah, because the kids become rebellious,
Yeah. So you were blessed.
I was blessed. Like I said, I want to share this experience. I'm not gonna make it seem like I'm all goody two shoes here because I'm not. Now, when I turned 18, became an adult, and was on my own. I started missing with other people. Because not under my mama's roof anymore. She couldn't control who I hung around. So I had some neighbors on the West Bank. I lived in New Orleans on the West Bank, and they were into marijuana smoking. And I was trying to be down.
Yeah, you got your puff.
Give me a little puff. Tried it, but I didn't like it. It wasn't for me. Eventually those friends, acquaintances or whatever you want to call it, associates, they fell off because I guess it was like, she's square, she ain't down with us.
Right.
So ain't nothing wrong with being square.
Well, but at the time, I'm not gonna lie. All my life, I felt like an outcast. I really did, because of, like I said, the sheltered environment I grew up in. But like Consuela said earlier, you got to be truly yourself, be who you are.
So I guess it's safe to say that that witnessing what happened to your friends had an impact on you, because I can imagine that someone you love, y'all all tried, but they wasn't strong enough to back off like you did, and it actually went sour for you.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, so I guess it's safe to say that that's part of what impacted you to want to be a part of this change.
Yes, definitely. And more so my son. I have a 15-year-old son. I have, a 26-year-old son too, and he's a good kid. They're both good sons. Very proud of both of them. And just thinking about my kids, like I mentioned earlier about the racial profiling, all kind of injustices that we have in the society. It's scary. Being a mom, on top of that, a single mom, it's scary. It's just very scary. So that's what really made me want to become involved. Right.
Well, we're really glad to have you.
Thank you.
We love you to death.
Oh, I love you guys too.
Right. We know that. But so this is basically what VOTE is. VOTE is an actual safe haven. Is what we're trying to create in VOTE. Like that's why we're trying to make VOTE visible so that people know that maybe we probably can't fix all the problems, but we will try and we will help, right? So anytime anyone that is just as involved, you dealing with something, you're not sure what to do, you're a bit confused, please find VOTE, Voice of the Experience, and you'll find our contact on the end of this program, and please use it because that's what VOTE is for. That's what our experience, our struggle, everything that we all went through, the awakening, is for you guys to have a place to come to heal your confusion, to help guide that anger, guide that fear, whatever it might be. That's what we're here for.
So the thing that gives me hope is the fact that I've seen so many changes over the last 6.5 years that I've been home in criminal justice, working on the task force with Department of Corrections, seeing them, how they deal with people on solitary confinement. We're actually fighting to end solitary confinement, seeing the many, many changes, especially our voting rights, and being able to exercise my voice as a formerly incarcerated person. I can actually choose who I want to represent me.
Right.
So that gives me hope. That gives me a whole lot of hope. What gives you hope?
Well, for me, I would say it'll be my children, my granddaughter, just letting them see what I'm a part of, meaning vote, and letting them see what I'm doing. That gives me hope.
Right.
And what gives me hope is knowing and not believing that there truly is a God. Because I see the miracles, I see the blessings, I see his work, his message. I see it all over every day, 24 hours a day, now that my eyes are open. Now that I am an adult and I am woke, I really see the big picture. And my beautiful kids. My kids, they give me hope because, I have the opportunity to instead of
to get it right.
Yeah, to get it right, because I was so afraid that my last impression on this in my community was the one that everyone remembered me going to prison on. And I worked so hard to try and change that, and now I have this opportunity. And my kids can honestly say that they're proud of Dad, because that was my worst fear, is dying without my kids and my mom telling me that they were proud of me.
Yeah. And when is our next meeting?
Our next meeting is held on August 17th, located at the Downtown Convention Center, address 124 South Buchanan Street, and the meeting is from 6 o'clock p.m. to 8 o'clock p.m.
And all of you watching this are invited to attend our monthly meetings. We meet every third Thursday of the month at the Downtown Convention Center. Y'all be sure to come and bring a friend. We welcome all.
Please come by. And thank you guys for joining another episode of From Change to Change. And in closing, we're going to have our battle cry, and you guys at home, you can join us. Ready, guys?
Yes.
Yep.
No surrender.
No retreat. My name is Kenneth Biggie Johnston. That's Biggie with the Y, not the I-E. I am co-founder of the Angola Special Civics Project along with Norris, which is the foundation of VOTE. To really appreciate the significance of VOTE, you got to understand where it really came from. VOTE, I would say, was created in a 6x9 cell block C in Angola, Louisiana. I arrived at Angola about 10 years before Norris, when it was the bloodiest prison in the country. In 1974, 43 prisoners were murdered by other prisoners. But that didn't bother me. What bothered me was going home. I had already been through Vietnam, so my main concern was going home. I was blessed though. When I got there, they were integrating the different jobs in the prison, and I was assigned to the law library. I had been to Vietnam, I had spent a couple of semesters at college, so they assigned me there. When I first got in the law library, all I wanted to do was learn law. I didn't care about my own case because I knew I had a life sentence and I had to be there a while. In a matter of 4 or 5 years, I became known as the best jailhouse lawyer in Angola. And that's what drew Norris to me. When Norris came to Angola, he wanted me to work on his case. Most inmates whose case I worked on, they would give me the paperwork and check back with me later. But Norris, this dude wanted to follow me everywhere I go because he knew I was going one place, to the law library. He wanted to know things about his case. He wanted to learn, research. He wanted to do this. And I couldn't shake him. So I tolerated him. And eventually we became the best of friends. Norris knew I was bothered by the fact that other jailhouse lawyers was filing writs for money, for sex, not doing a good job. So I told him, I said, bro, we need to start a law class. You know, we need to teach these dudes some law so that these other guys just can't tell them anything. So we started teaching a law class. But we was by the iron pile, by the basketball court. We didn't have a room. We was just teaching it wherever we could gather at. Anyway, the free personnel heard about us. And one day, Colonel Bonnet, they call him Macho Man, he called me to his office. He said that we were trying to take over the penitentiary. I told him, you got it confused, man. We trying to get out the penitentiary. And I don't know if my attitude or what, but he ended up putting me in the cell block. I was in the cell block maybe a year. And anytime I needed a law book, because I was still doing my legal work, I would send for Norris. Norris be right there, right there. So while I'm in the cell block, I'm trying to come up with a program where we could teach our law classes without all the bullshit. Anyway, I started drafting up a program that was be 40 men strong besides me and Norris. So when I came out the cell block, I showed it to Norris. I said, Norris, check this program out. And after we went over the program, I said, Norris, you know these people are not going to sign anything for me. So you be the chairman and I'll be the co-chairman. And let's roll like that. Man, we was rolling. In a matter of a year or two, we then wrote the 2045 law. We were having people contact their families to vote, but we didn't have computers then. All this was, hard labor. And we got so big that it was almost unbelievable. But this Major Bonnet was behind the scene hating on me. So after we was established, had an office, the prison accepted us, he built the case on me. I was talking to a deputy, and he heard this conversation and built the case on me and locked me up, sent me to the dungeon, sent me to the hole. Norris came to the control center trying to find out what happened to me. The same Colonel Bonnet, Major Bonnet, Macho Man, locked Norris up. So me and Norris was in the hole for about maybe 2 weeks. And Chico Yancey and the other people in the group were going to the people, saying, man, y'all locking them people up for nothing. They was able to pull Norris back down the walk, but they didn't want me on the big yard, so they sent me to Camp C, a slave camp where they do nothing but pick cotton. God bless me though. 2 years later, I was able to win my own freedom and came home. I was home 10 years before Norris, doing paralegal work, and when the Angola Special Civics Project was still rolling. And when Norris came home, he had it on his mind, and he put it in motion. And look where we are today. And it reminds me of something I told Norris way back then, when we first started talking about this program. I told him an old Chinese proverb, a journey of 1,000 miles begin with one step. And we made that step, and look where we are today. The things that me and Norris went through in trying to just give people a chance, be fair with people, and teach individuals about their case. I mean, we friends to the grave. No surrender, no retreat.